Sylvia waited in front of the house, staring down 75th Street toward Central Park. Both of her parents were the type that believed that a taxi would always present itself at just the right moment, especially on summer weekends when traffic in the city was lightest. Sylvia thought that was horse shit. The only thing worse than spending 2 of her last 6 weeks before leaving for college on vacation with her parents would be missing the flight and having to spend one of those final nights sleeping upright in an airport lounge, a stained seat cushion as her only comfort. She would get the taxi herself. It wasn't as if she wanted to spend the whole summer in Manhattan, which turned into a melting concrete armpit. The idea of Majorca was appealing in theory. It was an island, which promised little waves and nice breezes, and she could practice her Spanish, which she had done well in during high school. Everyone, literally everyone, from her graduating class was doing nothing all summer long, just taking turns hosting parties when their parents went to Wainscott or Woodstock or somewhere else with wood-shingled houses that looked distressed on purpose. Sylvia had looked at their faces enough for the last 18 years and couldn't wait to get the hell out. Sure, yes, there were 4 other kids from her class going to Brown, but she never had to speak to them again if she didn't want to, and that was the plan. Find new friends. Make a new life. Finally be somewhere where the name Sylvia Post came without the ghosts of the girl she'd been at 16, at 12, at 5, where she was detached from her parents and her brother, and she could just be, like an astronaut floating in space, unencumbered by gravity. Come to think of it, Sylvia wished that they were spending the whole summer abroad. This way she would still have to suffer through August at home, when the parties were sure to reach their weepy and desperate apex. Sylvia did not plan to weep. A taxi with its light on rounded the corner and came slowly toward her, bouncing its way over the potholes. Sylvia stuck one arm in the air and dialed her home phone number with her other hand. It rang and was ringing still when the taxi came to a halt. Her parents were inside doing God knows what. Sylvia opened the door to the taxi and leaned into the back seat. "It'll just be a minute," she said. "Sorry, my parents are on their way out." She paused. "They're the worst." This had not always been true, but it was now, and she wasn't shy about saying so. The taxi driver nodded and clicked the meter on, clearly happy to sit there all day if need be. The cab would have been blocking traffic, but there was no traffic to block. Sylvia was the only person in the city who seemed to be in a hurry. She hit redial, and this time her father answered after the first ring. "Let's go," she said, without waiting for him to speak. "Car's here." "Your mother's taking her time," Jim said. "We'll be out in 5. Sylvia clicked the phone off and scooched her way across the back seat of the taxi. "They're on their way," she said. Sylvia leaned back and closed her eyes, feeling some of her hair catch on a piece of duct tape that was holding the seat together. It seemed like a genuine possibility that only one of her parents would come out of the house, and that would be it. The whole thing wrapped up like a shitty soap opera with no satisfying resolution. The meter ticked away, and they sat in silence, Sylvia and the taxi driver, for 10 whole minutes. When Franny and Jim finally came bustling out of the house, the horns of all the cars now stalled behind the cab acted as a processional march, scolding and triumphant. Franny slid in next to her daughter, and Jim sat up front, the knees of his khakis pressing against the dashboard. Sylvia was neither happy nor unhappy to have both of her parents in the taxi, but she did experience a moment of relief, not that she would have admitted it out loud. "On y va," Franny said, pulling the door shut behind her. "That's French," Sylvia said. "We're going to Spain." "Andale!" Franny was already perspiring, and she fanned at her armpits with their passports. She was wearing her traveling outfit, carefully honed over flights and train rides in all corners of the world. A pair of black leggings, a black cotton tunic that reached her knees, and a gauzy scarf to keep her warm on the airplane. When Sylvia once asked her mother about her immutable travel habits, her mother spat back, "At least I don't travel with a handle of whiskey like Joan Didion." When people asked what kind of writer her mother was, Sylvia usually said that she was like Joan Didion, only with an appetite. Or like Ruth Reichel, but with an attitude problem. She did not say this to her mother. The taxi pulled forward. "No, no, no," Franny said, yanking her body toward the plexiglass divider. "Make a left here, then left again on Central Park West. We want to go to the airport, not New Jersey, thank you." She sank back against the seat. "Some people," she said quietly, and stopped there. No one said anything for the rest of the ride, except to answer which airline they were flying to Madrid. Sylvia always liked driving to the airport. because it meant traveling through a whole different part of the city, as separate from the corner she knew as Hawaii from the rest of the United States. There were detached houses and chain link fences and abandoned lots and kids riding their bikes in the street. It seemed like the kind of place people drove their cars to, which thrilled Sylvia to no end. Having a car sounded like something out of the movies. Her parents had had a car when she was little, but it grew creaky and expensive in the garage, and they'd finally sold it when she was still too young to appreciate what a luxury it was. Now whenever Franny or Jim spoke to someone who kept a car in Manhattan, they reacted with quiet horror, like people who'd been subjected to the rantings of a mentally ill person at a cocktail party.